So you're thinking about building your perfect home, custom build, your dream home in Beaufort or Bluffton, South Carolina. If that's you, then you need to hear this. I sat down with a top local builder who's also a structural engineer. Very important in this area. Remember, this is the Lowcountry. There are things about building here you don't have to consider in other areas. It's not like building in Ohio. And this builder breaks down the key issues that you need to be aware of before you even get started. Hi, I'm Bob LeFavi with eXp Realty, and you're about to get invaluable information. Try getting a builder to sit down with you and discuss all these things before you even have a plot of land. Sit back, take notes, and stay to the end, because I'm going to finish with 3 important factors, the last one of which you really need to consider. Let's dive in. Okay, we're here with Dean Muscle, structural engineer and also local builder. So, Dean, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. I know you guys are busy. So, here's the question I really want to ask is, as a structural engineer, this is the Lowcountry. And people coming from other parts of the world may not realize that, there are soil issues. There are issues that you have to look at particularly. They may not know a lot about. What are you looking at? If someone were to come here and say, can you walk with me on a lot? What's some of the first things that you're looking at least in terms of the soil and the land itself?
Yeah, absolutely. The old saying in real estate is location, 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 and that's true everywhere. It's true here. But right behind it here in the Lowcountry is elevation, elevation, elevation. So, it has elevation has a trickle down effect on a lot of things. The type of house that you can build, and it also can have a lot to do with your soil conditions and what you might find. And when we talk about soil conditions, there's kind of 2 things that could affect it. It could affect your sewer treatment system as far as septic systems and things like that. It can also affect the structural support. So you want to make sure you've got adequate, bearing capacity and things like that. But so those are the kinds of things that we're sort of evaluating. And in general, the lower the lot, the lower the land, the more important it becomes, or the more often we might see soil conditions that are a challenge.
Okay, so some ideas on elevation. I know it's kind of hard for you to give a ballpark, but I don't want to try to nail you down. But when would you be concerned? Below what feet elevation would you be concerned that we're much more likely to run into issues here, or even flooding issues?
Yeah, well, a lot of the high ground, obviously the bluff of Bay Street and things like that. I mean, the old timers back in the way back, they picked the primo spots, so the elevation was important. So we're seeing more and more building on lower and lower lots. So kind of been picked over a little bit. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something you might need to plan for. We see houses built on, 6, 5, sometimes elevation, and there's some things you can do, but those are definitely numbers that you really start to be wary, or at least, more cognizant of, and checking into these things a little bit deeper. And so those types of elevations, you may have some saltwater flooding from king tides and such like that. But it's done, and in the right scenario, in the right it could be an opportunity, still. So I don't necessarily think it's something to completely look over. It's just something to consider. Why is this lot $200,000 less than the lot that is at 9 elevation? There's a reason.
What can you do to mitigate some of that? What are some of the things that you would do to help prevent that from being a real issue? If somebody comes to you and says, "Look, Dean, it's 7-foot elevation, but I love this lot. I mean, look at this view." Right? What are some of the things that you would look at as a builder that you might be able to do?
Well, obviously we can affect the elevation a little bit by hauling in fill dirt, appropriate fill dirt, and in most flood zones. I don't want to get too in the weeds on that, but a lot of flood zones where we are able to bring the elevation up a little bit. Normally, Beaufort County is known for trees. I mean, that's a part of what makes Beaufort so special, is all the trees, live oaks and things. So normally we've got a tree covered lot such that we're not going to affect the elevation, by a great amount, but we can bring it up, often a foot and a half, something like that, to get up to where you maybe at least have positive drainage away from the house, and driveways and things like that. But often, it's not a scenario where we're bringing in feet and feet of fill. Even then, that's costly. So all those things, all these steps that you can take to make a low lot better diminish,
Right. Sure.
as you spend more and more, they you get a little bit of diminishing return. Why am I I'm buying a lot for 100,000, spending 50,000 on making it a little bit better? Let's spend 220,000 on a lot that
Doesn't need any of that.
That doesn't need as much of that. So those are all things to consider. Some things can be done. Sometimes a lot's just too low, and I'm quick to tell somebody, this lot is not one I would look at anymore.
So you have those conversations, and I mean that's all part of it. So in other words, if you got in advance, hey, we're going to have to do something with the septic system here because this. So you're having these conversations, and the potential client or the person who's bought the lot, they're aware of all this going in. So you're able to give them sort of your analysis early on.
Yeah, in broad terms, very often early on, we may not know exactly what type of house they're gonna build, and what exactly they're looking for. So in broad spectrum, yes, we can, and we can do soil testing both for bearing capacity and obviously also for, people call it a perk test, but a soil test for septic systems to be used. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, now shifting to the house itself. Somebody comes and they've got a lot. Right, or either picked out or maybe even purchased, and they may even have a house plan. Hey, I saw this in a magazine, or I even have these plans. Many folks coming here, if they're retired, for example, we know that a lot of them are looking for a single story. They don't want to worry about stairs, so that then widens the footprint, I would imagine. So, what are some of the things you're looking at when you're looking at what kind of house, or what style, or what shape of house is going on what lot?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, kind of just stepping back a little bit on just the overall appropriateness and evaluating appropriateness. Appropriate for you and appropriate for, John Doe or somebody else may be completely different. So we need to have a conversation with the owner about the type of house they're looking for. So obviously a house at elevation with the ground elevation at 7, like we were talking about, if it's a customer that says, I want no more than 5 steps, that's not a lot for them, because we have a minimum flood elevation that we're required to build to, and every lot's going to have that if you're in a flood zone, which many are, if we're talking about waterfront stuff. And so the ground elevation may be down at our feet, but FEMA has established a flood elevation that we have to build to. Let's say it's here, and then each municipality will have what they call a freeboard, which is just how much higher than that elevation that you have to build, and it kind of varies. So again, you kind of have to have somebody in the know, whether it's a builder or an in the know real estate agent or an in the know architect, to tell you, this is how high the house has to be above the ground, no matter what you want, and then you go from there. So if you have somebody that's looking for a house with a few steps, we can eliminate some lots, right off the rip. Maybe architecturally, they just don't like the style of a home that's raised up in a drive under. So to evaluate a lot, you really got to talk some with the customer about what they're, what they're looking for. But then, moving on from that, there's a million things to talk through and consider.
Can you talk about setbacks also?
Yeah, setbacks. So once we sort of know, okay, this lot, we can build a house that's this high off the ground. You like that, Bob? Okay, sounds great. Let's move to the next step. That's probably setbacks. We got to look at that. So the OCRM line, we call it, but it's the
Ocean Coastal Resource Management.
Thank you. I was
Yeah.
probably going to stumble over that. But yeah, it's essentially the designation between saltwater plants and freshwater plants. They kind of go off the plant life there to establish that. Again, it varies by jurisdiction, but the Beaufort County, which is a lot of our stuff, is going to have a 60-foot setback from that line. So 60 feet away from that saltwater line is where we have to build.
All right. So the average person then watching this, okay, they may have a lot that's on the marsh, on the water, even deep water, and it's probably going to be just one side of their lot up against that OCRM line. right?
Yeah, typically, we see that often, but again, lots can be all sorts of things. The coastline is not straight, so sometimes it is, that one side. Sometimes it may have a little ravine that comes around the side. It all kind of depends, and then so that line is not always straight.
Okay.
But regardless of the shape of that line or where it goes, 60 feet from that, in a lot of cases, it's different in different jurisdictions, but is kind of where the building has to be, and that's to create a river buffer, between the pesticides you're going to put on your lawn and things, and having a distance to filter those things out before they get into the waterways. So that's going to be true everywhere, and that tends to take a piece of the land. So you may have a half an acre that becomes much smaller than half an acre, depending on the scenario.
So what about the other borders then, right? I mean, there are setbacks there typically, and what are they who decides those, and what do they look like?
There's typically setbacks, and if it's if it's not in a neighborhood or a PUD, a planned unit development they call it, that is set up that way, then it would go to the zoning of the appropriate jurisdiction. So Beaufort County, Town of Port Royal, City of Beaufort. All of those three have their own zoning maps, their own zoning ordinances, and different setbacks. So the answer is that really depends a lot. It can change. We definitely need to investigate those side and front setbacks, amongst a bunch of other zoning considerations on height and height above grade. And there's lots of zoning restrictions that could be put on a particular lot. But if it's in a neighborhood, which very often it is, most often if it's a PUD, then the ARB will have had setbacks for the sides and front.
Are we typically looking at, and I'm trying to nail you down on things because they're all different, but 20 feet, 15, somewhere in between?
5 to 15 is sort of your range generally, and maybe there's some rural areas in Beaufort County that might be 20 on the sides, but 15 feet, is depending on the zoning classification and the type of neighborhood. Obviously, in your more TND, the traditional neighborhood design neighborhoods like your Celadon, Habersham, things like that, those are going to be much smaller setbacks than some of your more established neighborhoods that might have been developed in the late 80s, early 90s.
So it could be significant. So you've got a decent lot, and now you're 60 feet in from the OCRM line, you're 15 or so feet on each side, and you got a wide footprint house, maybe a single story house. That could really significantly affect and so what in that situation, as a builder, I know you do custom homes too, so tell me about that process. Somebody has a house in mind, it may have to be massaged. I mean, how does that process work?
So very often I get, and me as a structural engineer before I would see it, but I get somebody, they say, I've got this house, I want to build this house. And I say, okay, great, where's the lot? And they say, well, I don't know yet. That's common, and I get it. I understand that's how people start on the internet, looking at plans, but it's not good practice, So it's very rare that we find a lot that a house plan just happens to fit in. Now we're talking about waterfront lots, if we're talking about a neighborhood, where all the lots are 100 by 200 and they're all very similar, then maybe that's a little more realistic. But very often our lots, we may have a view direction that we're trying to take advantage of.
Good point. Can you talk about that? Because some people love the eastern exposure, some people the western, they want to see the sunset, but that can really be, it can be overbearing in the late afternoon when it gets really hot and you can't, and the sun's in your eyes. So tell me about, what do you think? Tell me about that.
Everybody's kind of got their opinions on that, and I see, with magnificent sunsets, magnificent sunrises, and then the southern exposure takes better advantage of some of our predominant breezes and things, which in the summertime in Beaufort and bugs and things like that breeze go a long ways, and that affects you all day long, as opposed to 30 minutes in the morning or 30 minutes in the evening.
Well, that's a good point, and you can make some adjustments with that. How are you putting the porches and all those kinds of things depending on?
Yeah, absolutely. Good design is going to take all of those things into account, and it's just very rare that you just have a house plan that just is going to be able to be plunked down right there, just like it is. there may be those trees we were talking about.
Right.
Maybe there's a 42-inch live oak tree that is in, within that building area, and we need to try to find a way to incorporate that into the front yard, and it's going to make the house or the backyard,
Sure.
whatever. But maybe we need to pick a plan that works around that. Maybe it's the way you come in on the road.
Right.
And does the garage on the waterfront homes, very often the garages go in the front and the house is in the back. Do you want that house or the garage on the left side
Sure.
or on the right side?
Sure.
So, there is just a lot of parts
Sure.
and pieces to evaluating a lot, drawing a house that fits that lot, the view direction, the breezes, and the setbacks, and the significant trees that are on the lot. So it really is a lot to consider. Yeah, I've really come to respect, as an engineer. I used to, an architect would bring me a set of plans. I'm thinking, where did you come up? How have I not seen it all? This is a new one. Why is he doing this? And you start to realize when you kind of got into the design build business like we're doing. It's an art, and a good architect that can listen to the customer and take in all their considerations, all the considerations of the lot, the trees, the view directions,
and even the HOA will have a say in all of this.
Oh
right?
yeah, and the HOA symmetry, things. Oh yeah. There's a lot of competing interests. It's a challenging job. I really come to respect people that do it well.
Well, the people that I know who you built their home, they universally love you. It's a little rare, but you're obviously very meticulous, and you're great at giving people really what they want and making sure that gets done right. But all right, Dean, let me ask you this. So a person is coming here, is in the process of buying a lot or has one in mind. What are the steps? When do they need to engage you, an architect? Is it all at the same time, or what comes first? What would you recommend that those steps be, sort of in a chronological way?
Well, you need to first make sure that the lot is going to work for, in general, the type of house you're in. So you want to go through those steps of how high do I have to build? Am I okay with that? Can I fit, a 2,200 square foot ranch on this lot? So you need to kind of go through those steps with some. Sometimes it's much more obvious than others. The more challenging the lot is, probably the more important it is, or the higher importance it is to get somebody involved sooner than later.
Sure.
But I end up spending a lot of time well before people are going to put down a deposit with me and build a house. But I enjoy helping people kind of move forward and giving them some guidance. So the sooner the better for me to speak with them and help them avoid buying a lot that isn't going to fit the type of the house that they want. But once you've kind of done that initial assessment of the type of house, the ARB regulations that you might have, the setbacks that you're going to be able to fit within that, then I'd say the next steps, you order a tree and topo survey. Plot out those trees. The architect's going to need that, or designer is going to need that. Right off the rip. That's going to drive a lot of their design. But yeah, I like to be involved as early as possible to keep people from spinning their wheels, spending time and money in a direction that's ultimately not going to be where they need to head. Whether it's designing a house that doesn't work, designing a house that's over budget, or that type of thing.
Fantastic. Okay, so, in your experience, what has been the factor that you've come to realize that most folks going into this, the buyer, from the buyer's point of view, have not recognized, have been surprised by, did not take into consideration? So what can you tell those people watching that, keep this in mind, that a lot of people don't keep in mind?
I would say that, and it depends on where you're coming from, but and what's normal and wherever you're coming from. And we get people, that's what's great about Beaufort, people from all over. But very often people are surprised by cost here, but also the timeline it takes. So there's a lot of steps to go through here. You know, we've got to order a tree and topo survey if it doesn't already have one. You know, we've got to get that OCRM signature sign off from the state that we were talking about. That's going to drive all of our setbacks. There's a timeline there. We may have to get a septic permit, you know, and evaluate the soils there. And you know, then we need to sit down with an architect and or designer and draw their house plan. And so almost always it tends to surprise people that the timeline that is ideal for that. So,
and you really have very little control over the architect's time frame.
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, obviously everybody's busy. A great architect probably isn't sitting around waiting on somebody to call and, you know, twiddling their thumbs. We're obviously at their mercy. We can't affect it though, because we can bring up things that we need to go ahead and get this ordered. You know, we can be working on the septic permit, things that sometimes get sort of skipped over. But one of the biggest things that we can do to help with that is kind of staying in touch with the customer as they're with that architect or designer, and guiding them a little bit on budget, on things like that. You know, I was telling you before, I designed a lot of houses as a structural engineer for other builders and architects and homeowners that, you know, it wasn't my place at the time to say, but that I knew, you know,
this is going to be tough.
Weren't likely to be built. I just saw that, wow, this is expensive, you know, and then I'm kind of reading the room a little bit and thinking, you know, we may be spinning our wheels here. So very often I design houses, spent customers' money that, you know, ultimately either didn't get built at all or, you know, changed dramatically once they got a budget. So I saw it time and time again. A homeowner goes to an architect, hires the architect, they design a beautiful house that they love. Yeah. The homeowners love, the architect loves, and then
nobody talking about cost.
That takes 6 or 9 months. Yeah. They're in love with it. All right, we're ready to go. Let's go get some prices. They go out and get a few prices, and they realize, oh my goodness, you know, this isn't going to work for us. We don't want to spend that much or whatever. Right. And so you kind of have to go back to the drawing board a little bit. So that's the biggest thing that I can do to help with the timeline. Is
early on.
Early on. Now, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to gum up the works of the architect. You know, like I said, I respect what they're doing, and you know, there's a lot of competing interests. And one of those is budget. But it's not the main thing. So, you know, you have to sort of massage that. But just interject.
But if no one's thinking
about it, then it can often go.
You're injecting some realism early on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what we want to avoid is, you know, 9 months, drew a house you love, but don't want to pay for, and then we're going to spend another 9 months drawing one that you do. So,
all right. But since you mentioned 9 months, okay. So I've got a lot. I start rolling with you. I start getting the architect on board. Are you thinking that initial phase before you put a shovel in the dirt? 6 to 9 months, maybe. And I know you're going to say, and I understand, it's going to depend on a lot of things that are going on. But in general, you're hoping to be done in that period of time?
Yeah, that's a good time frame to, you know, sort of ballpark time frame to use, I would say. It can be done quicker. It depends on so many things. Do we have a septic permit, for instance? Could take quite a while. Do we have an OCRM signature? A lot of these lots that you're showing customers probably already have a tree and topo survey with an OCRM signature, and it may have a septic permit all in place, or it may be sewer. You know, so all these things have to do with one another, and then obviously ultimately the architect that you choose, what their lead time, you know, looks like, and then are you designing a house that's completely from scratch? Right. Are you taking one and massaging some things on it? And then the customer is the other big one is how quickly and engaged are they? Do they get answers back? So it depends on a lot, but in general, 6 months is a reasonable time frame, and I very often see it going, you know, 6 to 9 months to get started.
So then to push the envelope a little further, really try to nail you down. Yeah. All right, so now you've got a shovel in the dirt. What's great about you is that you don't have 30 houses being built at any one time, which I never understood how anyone's able to do that. You have a limited number, and you're there, and you're engaged, and you're local, right? I mean, you're in the home. So you probably have a better capacity to answer this question than anyone else. 3,000 square foot home on any lot in any of these communities. From the time you put the shovel in the dirt, assuming no major hurricanes, no other things to set you back, ballpark, year, maybe before?
Yeah, obviously, it depends, right?
Yeah.
So, and we build a lot of different types of houses. So a lot of builders you'll see that kind of live in one space. I don't look for houses to build. I look for people to build for. So, we just want to do good work for good people, and that now there's a certain minimum level of quality that we're going to be able to be willing to stand behind and be able to warranty and things like that. So obviously there's a quality level we're doing, but I build houses that have a $10,000 appliance package and houses that have a $70,000 appliance package. So it kind of depends what ultimately happens, but we're looking for that person, not the house. So.
Sure.
Obviously, a more simple, smaller house is going to take less time than what I call, your ultra custom house that might have, a lot more intricacies. But in general, 12 months is a doable time frame for most of our homes. Yeah.
Dean, I know you are a busy guy. I cannot thank you enough for helping out those who are watching and all of us really understand better what the process and the key factors are here building in the Lowcountry. So thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and I guess reiterate a little bit or take a chance at the end here to remind folks that the main thing you can do, and again, it's when I'm outside of my wheelhouse doing something, and I used an example before about reading the mortgage. I can read the mortgage and all the way through, but I don't.
You're just signing.
Yeah. I read it. That's how I was taught, but it didn't mean a whole lot necessarily. So anyway, my point is how I mitigate that is I work with people that I trust. So. I would just say that we've given you some information here, but there's a lot of parts and pieces, and you need a good team around you, and that starts with a good real estate agent. And so you're in a good place there to start, but also a good designer and a good home building partner. So.
Be educated and have a team. Yeah.
You're going to need to lean on the experience of of people here that have done it successfully.
And for so many folks who maybe this is their retirement home, and this is it. They look at this like this will probably be our last home, and this is the one we want to really get right, and it's this most significant investment that people make. So you're exactly right. There should be nothing here that is taken lightly at all, as it impacts so many things, and not just location, but impacts your quality of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're this pre-retirement market that we're in. Very often is maybe the most expensive purchase of their lifetime, or at least, the most expensive of this year. And while you're building it, it's probably one of the most important things that you've got going on in your life at the time. And so, we take that real seriously. We're not selling a widget, we're a piece of a team, building somebody's home.
And by the way, not to add another point here, but you are really good about informing your clients about the status of their build, right? They can get on there and they can see what's going on at any time, which is fantastic. Because I know there are situations in which folks are out of town, they're not getting regular updates. They're not able to catch, oh wait, those are the wrong cabinets, or that color doesn't look right, So you're being able to do that. You really using technology to
we've got some processes and some software that we use for keeping people updated. Of course, the goal is to not have the wrong cabinets from the get-go, but we want to keep people updated so they have something to smile about, not the other way around.
Thanks again, Dean. I appreciate it very much. Okay, with that as a foundation, there are 3 other issues to discuss, the first of which I know you're already asking about. Cost. I didn't ask Dean about cost because no builder likes to get nailed down on cost, but I don't mind being nailed down a little bit. I'll tell you what I think, at least now, is generally speaking true, a reasonable ballpark figure. New construction, you're pretty much looking into 300s now. All of this also depends on the development. So if you're in an HOA, that HOA might regulate a few things. One time we were building in an HOA and they told us we had to put more windows on the side of our house, which was kind of silly because nobody saw that side of the house. We had windows on it and it was our home, right? But they told us we had to put that in there. I mean, HOAs try to maintain conformity for a reason. And sometimes that conformity means more cost to you and to the builder. So keep that in mind as well. In general, HOA you might be upwards in the upper 300s, sometimes maybe even in the $400 per square foot range. And outside an HOA, you might have it built for the 350 or so range, but it's significantly more than it was a few years ago, and the costs keep going up, especially post-COVID. Now, another thing to keep in mind is resales tend to be a little bit less expensive. A lot less expensive? No, but a little less expensive. So if cost is the main issue for you, you might look at a resale instead of building, but that's all part of the evaluation that you have going on in your head when you're talking with a builder and you're evaluating the cost, right? It's going to be budget, and am I getting what I want for the price I'm paying? And number two, and this is more ideological than anything else, but just follow me on this. You know, we go through our lives and we experience different homes. And we see things in different homes that we like and things that we don't like. And over time, we develop, a kind of box of all the things that we put in there of things that we like. And then so when we go to build our custom home, we want to take that box and everything in it and just boom, put it in that custom home. But it doesn't work well like that because you see, we tend to think that box is finite, right? It doesn't change, but it does. There are things outside that box that you'd want to put in and things that you think go in it that eventually you might want to take out. And there are things that are available in the Lowcountry you don't even know about yet, and you'd want to put them in. So I don't tell you that so that you don't want to build your custom home, you want to buy a resale and fix it up. No, I tell you that because I think you might do yourself a disservice to come with a finite set of plans. Instead, it's better to come with a general idea, a schematic, have a lot in mind, and work with the builder to develop your custom home. And number three, and you may not think this is very important, but I'm telling you it may be the most important factor in building. And it's this: do you have the temperament to build? Really, do you have the temperament for the building process? Because there will be imperfection, and there will be things that don't go according to plan. How do you handle that? How do you respond to that? There may even be tension or conflict in your relationship because of the building process. Those are good questions. Case in point, perfect example. We have these clients. They bought a lot, nice piece of land in a neighborhood. They're looking for builders. Sue introduces them to a number of great builders. They came across another builder and chose that builder. And I don't know, maybe it was a price point, maybe they just hit it off. Clients can choose whoever they want. So in the construction process, the clients walk in one day and they see something that stunned them. Like if I were to tell you what the builder did, you would say, what? No way. Who would do that? That's stupid. Yep, that's exactly what he did. So the clients walk in and they blow up. What is this? Oh, don't want to look at this every day. You got to fix this. And of course, the builder was able to say, well, because the plans were vague enough, no, that's the way I'm choosing to do it. And he wouldn't change it. And it got nasty and ugly. And pretty soon, that tension cascaded to tension about a lot of other issues. And it dragged on. Everybody was in their own corners. No one wanted to meet and compromise. And it got heated. So consider this. A construction loan with a bank doesn't oftentimes have a defined end. Like you can keep moving the goalposts. Construction takes as long as construction takes. The problem for the client is the client may have expenses, like they're out of town or they're renting or they got all their stuff in storage. So every month that goes by, the client is spending more and more money. Pretty soon, the clients just threw their hands up and they said, fine, we'll close just to be done with you. That's how bad it was. Which means they're not able to call on that builder, later on if things were to go wrong. I mean, the relationship just soured. How will you handle something like that? God forbid anything like that happens, and it probably won't. But how would you? How do you? Like if you're going into the building process thinking, hey, it's my way or highway. I'm paying for this, and it's going to be perfect. I'm paying a premium, by the way. Then that may not be a perfect scenario for a custom build. If you're going into it thinking, I want to have a good relationship with this builder. And if there are areas where there's a conflict, we're going to find a way to compromise. And in the end, we're going to have a really cool house that we're going to make ours. That is a great scenario for custom build. Something to keep in mind. I hope this video has been helpful to you. If Sue or I can help you in any way discern what lot and how to go about the process, we're happy to help. Thanks very much for watching.